Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday evening to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day and start to your week. Here to bring you the latest on what is now Tropical Storm Ernesto. We now can officially call it Ernesto. It's been dubbed by the National Hurricane Center that, and that is because the hurricane hunters confirmed that this had a defined low-level circulation earlier this afternoon, and not only confirmed that, but that the wind speeds in this system are tropical storm force strength. So they went on and just skipped the depression status and went right from PTC 5 right to tropical storm status. So we officially have Tropical Storm Ernesto. It is forecast to become a hurricane and a pretty strong hurricane. Could it potentially become a major hurricane, category 3 or higher? I think it has the possibility to do so. So we're going to go over the latest with this system right now, the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Of course, we're going to go over all model guidance from this afternoon into this evening. We'll talk about ensemble guidance, even taking a look at some of these hurricane models. And then we'll talk about short-term impacts for like the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, etc. We're not sure about Bermuda, and we're certainly not sure about Atlantic Canada. But for you folks in Bermuda, continue to tune in for updates. And certainly if you live up in Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, etc., everybody up there in Southeast Canada needs to pay attention to this system. I know it seems very far away, but I think you guys know that these systems race pretty quick throughout the North Atlantic and head right towards you guys sometime. So I got this jam-packed of information, and of course, the very end of the video will be me kind of nerding out with you guys, explaining why this is going to rapidly intensify at some point in the Southwest Atlantic, and then we'll discuss steering currents and just talk about why this is being potentially steered one way or the other by all this model guidance. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. So let's get rocking and rolling tonight. Let's make sure this is working because it was giving me a hard time this morning. Hopefully it doesn't glitch out on me throughout the video, but we're good to go for now. This is our big tropical storm. This is a very large tropical storm, and I think that is actually what is holding back this system from really intensifying more in the shorter term. Now, the upper wind pattern has not been super supportive for any kind of rapid strengthening or anything like that, but it's in the beginning stages of becoming a lot more supportive for, at minimum, a gradual strengthening with the system. And that is what the system is doing right now. Strengthening at a very slow pace, I would say, getting its act together. But like I just mentioned, it's a very large, very broad system. And you guys in the Leeward Islands, the Lesser Antilles, already starting to get some, probably some breezy conditions. You guys let me know what you're seeing, even in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, etc. Let me know what you're seeing out there. I would love to know. But this is a very large system. So we'll have to see how much it strengthens in that short term because, I mean, the actual low-level circulation of this system is going to pretty much move over your area over the next 12 to 18 hours. So we have to watch. We're expecting this to turn right into here. What happens after that? That is Bermuda right there, and of course Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, New Brunswick right up here. We got a lot to figure out with that. A lot of people just want to say, Mitch, this is a fish storm, blah, blah, blah. It's not a fish storm if it's going to impact land. Now, it is impacting more ocean than land. That's quite obvious, guys, but this still needs to be talked about, and I'm lucky to have a lot of viewers from the Atlantic Canada area. You guys are so nice, and thank you for people who've said hey from Bermuda. And of course, everybody in the Leeward Islands that continues to show their support in the Caribbean islands. But we still got to pay attention to this because this is going to impact people and have an opportunity to do so even in the longer term, a week from today up in Atlantic Canada as this races across the North Atlantic more than likely. But this is what's going on with the system right now. A closer look at this, and then we'll get off this. I know people are like, Mitch, just get to the model guidance. But a closer look at this, and the reason the colors dole out is because the sun is setting on this system right now. But if you notice, this is taking on that shrimp look, that cyclonic spin to it. You see how it's just kind of spinning like this now. And if you see right out here, you see these higher cirrus clouds right in here kind of fanning out. This tells me this is starting to enter a better upper wind environment. The upper level winds are becoming more supportive for air being dispersed out from the center of the storm. You can see it down here. See how air is getting pushed out over here. And we're going to see the conditions actually improve over here too eventually, but they're still kind of in the stages of not being that great right now. But I expect for you to get a fanning out motion even over here in due time. And when that happens, this thing will really, really start to get its act together. And it's already doing so right now. Defined low-level circulation underneath all this mid-level convection indicated by the white, and it's somewhere into here. So it's hard to see right now unless this was not as put together or really, really well put together, and we obviously would see an eye of a hurricane at that point. But this is it right here. It's definitely in the, like I said, slowly getting its act together right at this moment. So we'll get off this and we actually look at the hurricane hunters that really went back into the storm. And you know what's wild about this is it looks like the actual low-level circulation is right in here, but we do have some switching up of winds right in here too. So I still think that this is just not well put together at all, but it looks like some sort of low-level circulation is right here. You see how the wind barbs, you know, right here are coming out. You see how the flag portion is coming out the northeast. So you got winds basically coming out of this direction right into here, and then they wrap around and they kind of come out of this direction. So your defined low-level circulation is probably right in here, but you're getting some weird mixed signals right into here too, and that just might be just a general shifting of the winds. But those are just interesting features to watch when you have a weaker system that you're dealing with right now, which Ernesto certainly is. Now, the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, we'll have another advisory here in about 30 to 45 minutes, but from around 5 p.m., this was a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm, Ernesto. It's 1,009 millibar central pressure here. It is booking it at 28 miles per hour, so it's definitely not Debbie slow. Ernesto's a different storm. Definitely got some wheels about it, that's for sure. And booking it at about 28 miles per hour. That's pretty quick for any kind of weather feature, I would say. But, you know, another way to look at this, of course, I love this. This is available to you guys as the public, too. There's an app also. Zoom Earth is phenomenal, guys. It is so easy to use. It's like you're messing with Google Maps in the tropics. So if I actually zoom out here, you know, it's the same thing what we were looking at here at the satellite here in just a second ago. But this is our system. Sun is setting. That's why it's black out here in the North Atlantic. It's because the sun is set on the Atlantic here. So we zoom back in here. 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. Forecast to become a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm sometime tonight, 2 a.m. The actual center of the track of this is shifted south. So this could potentially make a landfall into like, you know, Guadalupe or somewhere like this, maybe north of Dominica. We just got to watch what happens with this. This could, you know, drift a little bit further north, a little bit more up into the northern sections of Lesser Antilles, like the Leeward Islands and these places. But we certainly got to watch up in Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, these areas up here. You know, I think regardless, I think this entire area is just going to see about the same impacts. All these islands here. And that is because, you know, it's not like we have a Category 2 or 3 hurricane rumbling through this area. So maybe the actual low-level circulation goes right over Guadalupe. It potentially could, but we just kind of have to see how that happens. It might not. But all in all, the impacts are about the same in this area. Now, once we get into around tomorrow afternoon, this could begin to strengthen. So the winds could begin to increase right on top of the Leeward Islands. And, you know, by the time we're into like tomorrow night around 2 a.m. Wednesday, this could be strengthening into a moderate grade tropical storm right on top of Puerto Rico, the British Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands. So this will definitely be strengthening sometime tomorrow evening into tomorrow night. So this is, you know, going to have an opportunity to bring some stronger winds, I would say, to Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, etc., into this area probably tomorrow night. And then we kind of begin to zoom this out, right? We expect this to intensify well north of Puerto Rico, but not quite as quickly as we thought. We get into like Wednesday p.m. This is still potentially a 70-mile-per-hour strong tropical storm. And then by like Wednesday night into Thursday morning, forecast to become a hurricane. Okay, Hurricane Ernesto, and then begins to strengthen steadily. And by the time we're into Thursday afternoon, it's a Category 1, high-end Category 1, 90-mile-per-hour hurricane. And then look how much it moves from 2 p.m. Thursday to 2 p.m. Friday. So 24 hours, it's starting to race off, and now it's a high-end Category 2, 110-mile-per-hour hurricane. And the center of this cone almost goes right over Bermuda. It's very rare to get a technical landfall of a tropical system or Bermuda. You can get impacts almost every hurricane season, but an actual landfall is tough. You got to get the actual low-level circulation to go right over that landmass to be considered a landfall. But Bermuda is equipped for these type of storms. I mean, you're really going to need a major hurricane to really put a dent in Bermuda, and let's hope that's not the case. I think and please comment if you're in Bermuda and really, I guess not say back me up on this, but confirm this, because I've heard from many sources that Bermuda is really built well, just built well in general. But of course, a high-end Category 2, 3 hurricane, if it's the actual eye of this system is going to go right over you, it's going to bring impact. So that's something we got to watch out for. But you guys are almost right in the middle of the cone as we are getting into this weekend, around Saturday or so. If the peak intensity increases another 5 miles per hour, then that means there's a major hurricane forecast to happen. And I think that might change over the next few advisories. I think the peak intensity has an opportunity to increase to a Category 3 hurricane. So that's just something to watch. And of course, the cone does not extend all the way up to Atlantic, Canada yet, but that's just because you're not in the 5-day range yet, and this thing is going to pick up a lot of forward speed from Saturday to Sunday into Monday, which is probably more so the time frame Sunday into Monday that it could impact you guys up here if it does, and it might not. So just things we got to watch. Now, we continue to move forward here. Here's your classic look from the National Hurricane Center that you guys are probably used to seeing. Just want to show that also before we go to model guidance. So let's start off by looking at the GFS. I would say, the GFS is not initializing this as a tropical storm. So it's initializing this a little bit weaker, I would say, but it says tonight this will begin to strengthen somewhat, but it actually has this re-weakening a little bit as we're getting into Tuesday morning. Has this, tropical system basically cruising over the Leeward Islands tonight. And, people tuning in from Barbados, Dominica points south, I would say the worst you're going to get is maybe some 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts and some just gusty showers and storms. I really don't think this is going to bring massive impacts to the Leeward Islands in general. I think that could change once you get into Puerto Rico. And as this continues to get closer to Puerto Rico, it has this making a landfall as a full-fledged, stronger tropical storm as we were getting into Tuesday night, tomorrow night, and Wednesday morning. So that's something to watch. I mean, that's Puerto Rico here, landfall. And, one thing I will watch for is if this thing intensifies over the next 24 hours, we might start to get tropical storm watches, hurricane watches issued for the British Virgin Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. So that's something to watch. We could get some hurricane watches issued in this area if this looks like it could potentially hit hurricane status or strengthen into a hurricane right on top of this area. So that is something to watch. But you keep this going here. All model guidance, the background of this really points to this intensifying once it gets into the Southwest Atlantic. How close is it going to get to the Turks and Caicos Islands? That's a big question. But most model guidance has this turning north pretty quickly. Thursday morning, 980 millibar, Category 1, maybe low-end Category 2 hurricane. We take it into Friday morning. If you don't know where Bermuda is, it's very hard to see, but it's right here. Okay, so we're getting into Friday morning. Has a 968 millibar hurricane. I would argue that's a high-end Category 2, low-end Category 3. And, we take it into Saturday morning, folks, and we have a darn near close to a major hurricane just south of Bermuda. And it looks like it's heading right towards Bermuda. Bermuda's right here. Here it comes. But and we're going to talk about this towards the end of the video. Watch how this bobs and weaves a little bit. Like it's heading right there, and then it bobs back west, and it misses Bermuda. So at this point, if something like the GFS was to happen, you would just get some outer bands in Bermuda. And the core of the system would pass, I would say, a couple hundred miles to your west as a major hurricane. And then this races off to the north. Now, what happens after that? Okay, we'll jump up a little bit further north. Well, this does not plow right into Maine or anything, but watch. Monday morning, August the 19th, so literally just about a week from today, this makes landfall, guys, is a sub 970 millibar. Either it's going to be some sort of a tropical system or subtropical system, extratropical. It might start to lose its tropical characteristics because it gets so north. Regardless, this is a powerful storm system that plows right into Nova Scotia now. So, excuse me. Okay, let's get together. So, this is why you cannot call this a fish storm, guys. Our friends up here in Southeast Canada could get the impacts from this. I mean, the latest GFS has this plowing right into Nova Scotia. Okay, and then Prince Edward Island, and then, wants to ride basically the western spine of Newfoundland. Okay, and then it heads on off and does its thing way up in the North Atlantic. So, of course, it seems like you guys are good for one of these a year. We've had them over the last few years, and this could be it. I'm not saying that's going to happen. And the reason I'm not is because what I'm about to show you with the Euro. Let's start down here first. European, same thing. The European really doesn't have this really getting together like the GFS does in the shorter term. In fact, the European is really staying weak. I'm not buying this weak of a scenario. But this is the European model is still saying this is almost a tropical depression like north of Puerto Rico. It's already a tropical storm right now, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Regardless, it does have this strengthening eventually into a hurricane as we are getting into Friday morning. I mean, it'd be nice if this scenario played out. That means, we wouldn't really be dealing with a strong tropical system at all that could be flirting with the idea of hitting Bermuda. But this does some weird stuff. The steering currents get weird out here in the Atlantic. This system can quite literally bob back and forth. And the Euro and the GFS show the scenario of this potentially happening. And then, this actually passes. Remember the GFS passes west of Bermuda? Well, the Euro passes west. Let's slow down. The GFS passes west of Bermuda. The Euro passes east of Bermuda as a 981 category, low-end category 2 hurricane. And just quite literally just gets kind of lost. And literally stalls out. It's kind of wild. It stalls out east of Bermuda. And just waiting for something to kind of pick it up, right? And finally, it starts to pick up some forward motion. And, we're getting into, let's make sure. And here it comes. Tuesday morning, it misses. It doesn't even come close to Nova Scotia or Newfoundland. There it is, on the bottom of your screen. So you can't just buy one model and freak out and, think worst case scenario. You got to look at all of it. That's why I spent some time. And if you look at the European Ensemble guidance here, which makes up 51 members, it's a pretty big spread. There's a couple members that are really escaping. It looks like they're getting picked up by that upper low that we're going to talk about here in a second. But they're kind of escaping out and heading on out. And those members actually do get close to the idea of affecting Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. But there's kind of some outliers. You still got a few members that are well west of Bermuda. Bermuda's right in here. And, Bermuda's kind of right smack in the middle of this model guidance right in here. That's a terrible circle, but you get what I'm saying. So, remember, Bermuda's very small. So, you're going to need the core of this storm to actually go right over Bermuda to be considered an actual landfall. Let's just hope and pray that does not happen. It's very rare for it to happen just because Bermuda is just a very small piece of land out there, a very small island out there in the North Atlantic. So you keep rolling here, and you see all these members, guys. A lot of them do miss Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, etc. But you got some that do get up here. Now, this is the European Ensemble. If you're looking at the GEFS Ensemble, okay, and it's not done running yet, unfortunately. So we're actually, let's see. Gonna come in for us. There it is. So, yeah, there's a huge spread, guys. Huge spread. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to go back. What? Y'all just bear with me. We're going to kind of wing this here. So, yeah, there's definitely, and this is as far out as we can go. We only got 126 hours out. So, if we kind of go back and look actually at the 12Z model guidance and go and look out about a little over a week out, and not a whole lot of members get up here in Atlantic Canada. But, of course, the 18Z run is running now, which made landfall into Nova Scotia. So I do wonder if some of these members are a little bit further west. Now, in the shorter term, as far as my friends down here in the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, etc., we'll take a look at some scenarios here. And we'll even go a little bit further up to Bermuda, too, with the hurricane models. And, the H-Wolf model does have this strengthening. In fact, we might have the 18Z run here. We do not. Okay. It does have this strengthening to a sub 1,000 millibar low tropical system. Kind of follows the GFS. Gets this close to hurricane status right on top of the British Virgin Islands, the Virgin Islands, everybody in that area. And just east of Puerto Rico, it has a 985 millibar hurricane. Now, the H-Wolf hurricane model likes to overdo strength a little bit from what I've noticed. But that's, I would say, a worst-case scenario for this area, Puerto Rico and surrounding islands. If you're watching from like the Dominican Republic, Haiti, etc., this could definitely bring some rain and wind to you guys, but I really think this is not going to impact you guys. That could change, especially if this system continues to race off to the west. That's something to watch. But the H-Wolf model really deepens this into a Category 5 hurricane, basically, and has this staring down Bermuda and making a very close pass to the west as a Category 4 hurricane. We don't want to see that. The H-half, what is this? The H-half-B model, which is, I would say, a better case scenario in the shorter term, has this, pretty much maintaining strength, beginning to strengthen somewhat over the Leeward Islands and then eventually over Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. But, takes a while to get this going. Thursday morning, kind of what the Euro is showing, 988 millibar strong tropical storm, low-end hurricane. And then this begins to deepen into that Category 2, Category 3 status. And guys, this heads right towards Bermuda and looks like it goes on to almost make an exact landfall sometime Saturday as a 957 millibar low. That would make it Category 3 status, no doubt, if that is what it actually ends up being. Let's hope that's not the case. But short-term impacts, this is what we know. Not a whole lot's changed with this, guys. Guadalupe, Dominica, 6 inches of rain plus, 100 to 150 millimeters of rain. St. Kitts and Nevis, you guys correct me on how to pronounce the Nevis part. I looked it up, but guys, I brain fart during these videos like crazy. It doesn't matter if I say it 10 to 15 times before the video. When I get going, it's like I totally forget. I do apologize. I promise you, one day I'll have everybody memorized out here. But I think you guys can understand. The British Virgin Islands, though, a good 100 to 150 millimeters of rain, 4 to 6 inches. And then, of course, you want to watch in this area in Puerto Rico, especially any rain bands that get pushed up against the higher elevations in Puerto Rico. Potential for 6 to 8 inches of rain, 150 to 200 millimeters of rain. So flooding is possible in some of these areas, especially if you live high up in elevation, some of these islands, some of these higher hills. You want to watch for rock slides, mudslides, and those things. So the chances to see tropical storm force winds pretty much right through the Leeward Islands. You got a good 50 to 60% chance to see winds over 40 miles per hour or more. I want to watch to see if this increases right in here. The chances to actually see winds exceeding, I would say 50 knots or higher, 58, 60 mile per hour winds or higher. Definitely increases, I would say, in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and these areas. But, you're already starting to get into this in Bermuda. Chances to see over 60 mile per hour winds is already up to like 30 to 40% chance in Bermuda. So confidence is already increasing up there. And, of course, storm surge up to 3 feet possible in these areas in blue. So we're talking about like the environment background that's going to support this to eventually maybe rapidly intensify once it gets north of the Greater Antilles. So right now the system is dealing with a decent upper wind pattern, not great. But as we start to get into like tomorrow night, like this is like in the middle of the night tomorrow night, you notice, and let's hope and pray this is going to work. It looks like it is. Cool. So you notice, one thing I'll note, in the northern hemisphere, low pressure, a flow around low pressure, rotates cyclonically, just like this. Okay? If you look really closely, and if you're wondering what we're looking at, these are winds at 200 millibars, so 35, 40,000 feet up in the air, which, by the way, if you don't know, is way above the actual low to mid-level circulation of these tropical systems. So this is basically wind flow, wind direction, way on top of the storm. So if you notice these lines kind of shooting out away from the system with the arrowheads kind of embedded into them, this is telling us that air is being dispersed away from the system. Like this, it's going like that, it's going like this, same thing over here, and same thing over here. So what does that mean, you ask? Well, that means that air is quite literally being pushed away from the system in the upper levels of the atmosphere. When air is being pushed away, it allows for more air to rise throughout the lower to middle portion of the storm. Then when it hits that upper area of the atmosphere, then that gets dispersed outward, whether it's one way or the other, and then that allows for more air to rise. If you saw some of these arrows right in here like pointing towards the storm, then that would probably tell us that we're dealing with a little bit of shear. And of course, all tropical systems deal with some sort of shear. It's just how much. I can tell you once it gets right here, it's going to deal with a much better environment. And I would argue, if this doesn't interact with land, then I could certainly see something like the GFS playing out where this strengthens a little bit more than forecast over this area. In fact, I would say the National Hurricane Center is buying more of the stronger scenario, with strengthening this into a 60 to 65 mile per hour tropical storm right over this area of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So that's something to watch. Now, this environment continues. Okay, we get into right here. It's the same kind of deal, I would say. Now, it gets a little bit more tricky, but air is certainly being dispersed outward. In fact, maybe enhanced a little bit from this trough to the north, some divergence aloft. Just a lot of air getting pushed away from the system. Now, it gets kind of weird right into here, and then kind of right into here, and maybe right into here. So the system could deal with a little bit of shear, maybe, on the western side of the system. But in general, that is a lot of air being dispersed outward on most, I would say 75% of the storm. So a nice fanning outflow divergence aloft. You mix that with the fact, guys, that if this has such a healthy environment, it allows for a very moist environment. So if you have an environment that supports a lot of rising air, of course, this is going to continuously fire shower and storm activity at will and maintain it after it fires it. And when that continues to happen, you'll get a sustained core around this actual low-level circulation. And when that happens, the structure of the system can dramatically improve, and then that will set the stage for a period of rapid intensification. And I think that has the opportunity to happen in the Southwest Atlantic somewhere. Right in here, you see how this has a very, a very noticeable green area, which is meaning moist level in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, which is what you're looking at here. It's pretty much shrouded from this dry air. Now, if you do notice right here, where I was just showing you that little bit of shear on the western side, you notice how, like, right in here, the brown starts to get really close to the L, kind of right in here. Not so much over here at all. Well, it makes perfect sense, because what I just drew to you on the upper wind pattern, a lot of air getting dispersed out over here. Okay, ugly arrows, I know. Air in the upper levels of the atmosphere is getting kind of pushed against the system. This could allow a little bit of dry air in the system. Might slow down that rapid intensification. It could. But, on this particular run, the GFS, it doesn't do a whole lot. Okay? So, hope that makes sense. Sinking air would do the opposite, right? We're not going to get shower and storm development. Rising air allows for it. So, now let's talk about steering currents. The first thing I want to show you is this. So this is the latest GFS, and this is kind of a GIF, if you will, showing basically from, when is it? Let's see. This Wednesday, and then this takes us all the way into next Monday. And that is basically the life of the system on the latest GFS throughout the North Atlantic, from basically north of Puerto Rico all the way to Nova Scotia. One thing I want you to notice, guys, watch how it bobs and weaves here. Like, quite literally, it jukes and jives across the Atlantic, kind of goes like that. I mean, man, I just drew that almost perfectly. Look at that. But you get what I'm saying, right? You see it kind of wiggle back and forth. Why does it do that? The Euro shows it kind of too. In fact, the Euro stalls it out right kind of in this area right here. So why does it do that? Well, I'm going to try my best to explain to you why it does it. And this is that same GFS run. So in this screen, lower pressure, and then the orange, you got high pressure. Another fancy term for it in the orange is a ridge of high pressure, and then the fancy term in the blue could just be a tropical system. It could be a trough of low pressure, an upper low, an upper trough, but normally when I say trough, I'm talking about lower pressure. So we take this out to about Wednesday morning. Let's draw where all our players are on the field. This is Ernesto right here, the area in blue, which is a low pressure itself, right? All right, here's a trough extending across areas of the North Atlantic and the eastern U.S. Flow around this trough is doing like this. Flow around this ridge is doing like this. But I'm just kind of providing an example. This ridge is not going to influence anything over here. But regardless, you get this back off your screen, there is a wide open weakness right here between the actual low pressure of Ernesto and this trough digging across this region. So even though this system really isn't feeling the flow of this trough, there's a weakness created by it. So if you're not familiar, a low pressure that is strengthening especially is always going to want to turn north. It's always want to gain latitude. It's just a process of momentum. They always want to get polar, basically. So this is no different, especially as this begins to strengthen in this area. So as it begins to strengthen, it's definitely going to begin to turn, and that's exactly what happens. And in fact, heads right towards this little upper low feature. This upper low latches on, or vice versa, the tropical system latches on to the upper low. They latch on to one another. It yanks on it a little bit. Watch how the system kind of goes from north to almost north-northeast right there. So it kind of goes, I'm going to draw right here. It kind of goes like this, and then it kind of goes a little bit like this. That's what the system just did. And that is because the flow riding around this upper low yanks on this system a little bit. But the influence from this upper low begins to weaken and actually pull away, so it detaches from this. So this is no longer really a player much anymore. If anything, it's just kind of creating a brief weakness in this ridge. So all of a sudden, this system, just like it was right in here, it gets right here on the GFS, and there's nothing really steering it anymore. It basically takes its own wheel again. Jesus, take the wheel, right, Carrie Underwood? But anyways, this kind of just gets trapped out here. And not trapped in a sense where it's not going to go anywhere, kind of like Debbie did off the coast of South Carolina for a couple of days. This thing is a strong tropical system. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to still head north, just like strong low pressures do. So it continues to head north. And then, and I've been talking about this for the last couple of days. I posted about it on social media. This new trough showed up a couple days ago. And flow around this trough is going to go like this. Flow around this ridge is going to go like this. But this thing is so strong right here that this flow around this ridge ain't going to do nothing much to the forward momentum of this tropical system. But I will say the little bit of flow around this ridge will help nudge on the northeastern side of the system enough to really prevent from this fully swinging out like this, like the Euro does. And I think also this trough right here of low pressure and the flow that's going around it like this is actually probably yanking on this a little bit. So I don't see this fully just going like this if something like this is in play. And sure enough, the GFS says, no, this does not go fully out to sea. And you see how the upper low right here, this upper trough here, latches onto this? It doesn't latch onto it enough to really slingshot it like Sandy or something and slingshot it up here into southern New England. You're going to need one heck of a trough in place, and you're going to need a weaker system. This thing still has forward momentum, but it affects the steering enough to where this eventually just makes a landfall further west instead of going out to sea, and that's exactly what it does. You keep this in motion, bang, goes right into Nova Scotia. So Euro shows the same pieces on the field, but it's just different. It's not influenced, I don't think, as much by this trough, but it is wild to see. I think there's going to be the potential that this has some sort of time frame this weekend where the steering currents do slow potentially for a period right in here after speeding up right in here, and then they kind of slow down right in here, right, this weekend, and then they speed back up. And guys, the European shows the same thing. Watch how it gets right into here, kind of speeds up, and then it just stalls out right into there, and then it speeds on back up and gets on out of here. And I think in general, the reason that the Euro misses, which we hope is the case, is because it's just in the short to medium term, just further east. Further east than west, like the GFS. All many things to watch, guys. It's an incredible thing how the weather works. There's always more to it than what people want. People want a quick 10 to 15 second forecast, but I get the luxury of having my own YouTube channel and talking for longer than 10 to 15 seconds. The weather people on your local news station, I know a lot of people will sit here and say in the comments, Mitch, you're better than my local weatherman here in blah, blah, blah town. I don't think I'm any better than them, and I appreciate that. And this is not me just trying to be overly humble. I just think that they don't have the opportunity to talk to you guys as long as I do. They probably could on their social media platforms, but on air, they don't got 30 minutes to talk about weather. And let's be real, most people are not going to spend 30 minutes listening to them. So just remember that, always allow grace for these local people. I know there's a good old saying that says, being a weatherman or weatherwoman is the only job you can have. and get it right 50% of the time and still keep your job. Every time I hear that, it just makes me freaking cringe. But I never say anything. I just let it roll right off my back. But, guys, I'm a weather guy, so of course I'm going to defend the meteorologist. But anyways, guys, it's just the way it is with the weather. God bless all y'all. Continue to tune in if you're in Bermuda, Atlantic, Canada, and continue to tune in if you're just interested in what's going on with the system, because this is a good learning system for us all, that's for sure. God bless all y'all. I'll talk to you in the morning.